one of the trends that I've been observing in my FYP recently, and to name all the caveats, of course, my FYP looks very different from your FYP. I've trained my algorithm in the Adam way, and you've trained your algorithm in the you way. But I also observe that I'm making pretty consistent topic on or content on pretty consistent topics, and I've got some mutuals out there, right? And so I'm guessing if you're seeing some of my content, then you're seeing some of the content that I'm also observing and identifying some trends. And the trends that I've been identifying over the past year have been trends about Jewish identity, what makes one Jewish, how Jewish identity is conferred upon a person. I think the origin point of some of this dialogue on this app or in social media generally is the result of the actions of the political state and the result of those who are seeking to defend what it means to be indigenous, to be engaged in conversations about indigeneity, what it means to be engaged in conversations about ancestral homeland, etc. So I think that not to address those conversations right now, but to address the existence of those conversations. And I think if you're watching me and you're into this content, you know what I'm talking about. That has forced a conversation about identity in ways that I do not think are fruitful for the community. Because I think when we get into those conversations, we run the risk when we reduce identity to DNA, to blood, to ancestry, to geography. When conversations of identity are reduced to those dimensions alone, I think we're missing what it means to be a member of the tribe. I think we're missing what it means to be a global extended family. Because what it means to be Jewish, I would say, is about a lot more than blood or genetics or ancestry or indigeneity, etc. I think what it means to be Jewish is a way of being in the world, a way, an outlook, right? A worldview, an attitude, a respect for the law. And I don't mean halacha, I mean like the law. I mean like legally, right? I mean, I think, listen, it's one of the, we are good at debate and negotiating and interpretation and discussion. And like, these are the things. And that's for a number of reasons that we have this. And I'm not trying to give a natural history right now, but at any rate, identity, what it matters, right? That I can wish, my neighbor Shana Tova, and that binds us together. Our identity is about shared jokes and things like this. There's a group thread with mutual friends, and me and my spouse are both on this, and my spouse is not Jewish, and we were sharing a lot of memes and things about Rosh Hashanah, and my spouse, my wife, is like, I have no idea what any of this means. You know what I mean? Like, what are these inside jokes about? That's part of our identity, right? The ability to engage in shared dialogue, shared inside jokes, because you sort of like get the milieu of where we exist, intellectually, theologically, culturally. It's hard to reduce any of those items down to a simple question of descent, like matrilineal or patrilineal. It's difficult to reduce that down to a conversation of ancestral homeland. It's difficult to reduce that down to what your genetics say or something like this about you. These are components that together paint a portrait of a people, but identity is not reducible to any one of those singular components, okay? So I wanted to say that. Now, some of the things I've been observing is this, like, what does it mean to be Jewish by choice? What does it mean to be a convert? What does it mean to convert within one movement or tradition as opposed to converting within another movement or tradition? And just to put more cards on the table, if there is a movement with which I identify, which is a loose affiliation, but I suppose it is, I'm a dues-paying member of a 100% online Jewish community, and the rabbi is credentialed through secular humanist Judaism. And in that movement, the movement that I would claim myself some affiliation, at least insofar as whatever you say when you pay dues. So if you're paying dues at your shul, then however you identify, this is through secular humanist Judaism. And one of the tenets of secular humanist Judaism is self-identification. To say, hey, if you identify as Jewish, then great, you're Jewish, come on in, is part of the deal there. Now, I don't want to overly simplify that. There are other commitments, But I think by and large, it's seeking to, remove some of the barriers to entry. It's sent to have a more inclusive and belonging-centered approach. I think it's an approach that exists in the world, seeking a world of nonviolence and justice and peace, etc. But certainly, when it comes to matters of halacha or Jewish law, a movement like the movement with which I count myself sort of a member of, that's not going to align or be compatible with the identity markers that are shared by other movements, which is not a value judgment. It's rather than being normative, being descriptive here. I'm just saying it is the case that what confers Jewish identity within the Reform tradition versus in the Orthodox tradition, or with Haredi, and what it means within Hasidism, and like how you consider yourself Jewish or not Jewish or whatever in these different traditions, it's going to vary some. And I think part of this is the diversity of who we are, and it's beautiful, and I love it. And I think it's also about empowering the individual to say what you most identify with is what you ought to do. That if to you, the structure, the traditionalism, the commitments to study, the idea that Hashem is present, and that you have some access to Hashem through the study of Torah or something like this, I think these are some of the attitudes. If it brings you meaning and purpose in your life, to have a kosher kitchen, like these are the things very meaningful to some people. And if you're aligning with a movement where that's meaningful to you, it's beautiful and wonderful. How important is the portability of your identity? If the portability of your identity matters to you, if you potentially want to move to the land one day, if you potentially want to have a marriage that would be respected in all movements, or a marriage that would be respected by the Israeli rabbinate, or something like this, then that may influence your attraction to certain movements, your commitment to certain movements. If somebody else's evaluation of your Jewish identity is not as important to you, if that's not if you're not concerned as much with the portability of your identity, then other movements may more clearly speak to you. If you're like me and you're looking for like pretty radically inclusive belonging, then a movement like secular humanist Judaism is going to speak to you. It's like, hey, we're seeking to eliminate barriers to entry. We're all going to have different attitudes and approaches and things about that. But what I want to do is stop us short. And I think I'm thinking about one of my friends in particular who says, listen, this is what it means to be halachically Jewish. And so that's not looking down at someone else, just to say, like, listen, this is halakha. This is what it says. If you want to be halachically Jewish, here are the things, right? And it means, you've got a Hebrew name and you can show, matrilineal descent, or if you convert, that you're converting in front of the Beit Din, and etc. Terrific. Very good, if that's the movement that speaks to you. But I think it's kind of like the portability question. If you're okay to sort of like shed off some of the constraints of halachically problematic cases, no value judgment, but then you've got to develop the resiliency to say, I'm in the body and the life and the identity that speaks to me, that makes sense to me, and I'm committed to it, and I navigate the world in that way, then there's a respect to like, okay, great. Who was another movement to say you are or not a thing, right? And so there's an interesting thing about fragmenting the global community, but also respecting tradition, right? So I don't know how we strike the balance. And I think the balance is going to become more incumbent upon us to navigate as we continue through the events of the last year and the events of the state, ideas about diplomacy versus militarism, etc., right? These things continue to present themselves to us. And I guess all I want to say is that I want you to feel comfortable in the body and the identity and the way that you're living your life in the world. And that I think Not to sound too Shakespearean about this, to thine own self be true. There's an extent of that, but we're also connected and global people. So it's balance and it's nuance. And I don't think there are clean and easy answers. But what I think would be the wrong result is to create adversarial relationships beyond the adversarial relationships that may already exist between the hawks and the doves, between those in support of the political state and those who carry some significant reservations about the existence of an ethno-state. And I sought to deliver that information to you in a very neutral way, not to necessarily take up a position in the way I describe it. But I do think cohesion, social cohesion is important. I think group identity matters. I think we are a community practice that requires community. Maybe it's not a minion that you're seeking on a daily basis, but it does seem to be the case that certain of our ancient traditions around diet and ritual purity and things like this have been developed with community mindset in mind. And that's another balance, right? Somebody like me who doesn't live in the community and isn't engaged in some of the community practices, what does that mean for me? Okay, I'll wrap it up there. I kind of got on here without a lot. I didn't know exactly where I wanted to take this, but there's some stuff I just wanted to say. I'm not incredibly committed to anything that I just said. And so if you have things to add, I'd love to hear them. I'm not so sure, though, that I want to be in a critical sort of a deal. I just think we are both bonded together by shared traditions and distinct, pluralistic, diverse people in the world. And I think the movements that strike the balance between group identity and individual expression are the movements that I'm most drawn to. And the movements that empower the individuals to claim for themselves their identities and how they want to navigate and move through the world, those are the types of things that I'm on the side of. Cheers.